Hi, I'm Len Witt, and I'm at Yale for a conference on who will pay the um, journalists in the future, who will pay the messenger. And I'm with Michael Schudson.
That's right.
And Michael, tell us a little bit about who you are and what kind of work you're doing.
I'm a sociologist. I'm a professor of communication at the journalism school at Columbia. I've been there for 4 years, just began full-time recently. And I've written a lot on the history of American newspapers and other aspects about American politics and media historically and at the present. Most recently, I co-authored with Leonard Downey a report called The Reconstruction of American Journalism for the Columbia Journalism School about the future of news.
It's a good read, and people should read it. I'm going to have my class read that in the fall, if things aren't outdated by then, but
Right.
it's a really good summary of where we stand right now. So, given that, what do you think the future of journalism might be?
Well, in the report and in the month since it came out, and you can get it at www.columbiajournalismreport.org, we're pretty optimistic, actually, with all of the problems that are going on in mainstream journalism, and the problems are serious economic problems. A lot of qualified and experienced journalists are losing their jobs, and there's a gap opening up, seems to me, in mainstream local accountability journalism in particular. And that needs filling for the sake of our society, for the sake of our democracy. How to do that? Well, I think Downey and I write in the report that there are many ways that's happening already, and they need some further support. The costs of doing journalism have decreased significantly because of the internet. There's online startups now all over the country. Serious news organizations, sometimes with 5, sometimes with 10, sometimes with 20 journalists, mostly young, but not all, who are doing serious reporting in their locales, sometimes that the mainstream media never did or hasn't been doing for a long time. So how can they do this? Well, one, the costs are low. They don't have to have paper. They don't need a delivery truck. They just put it up online. But you still need some money to pay these people, and they're finding it primarily through philanthropy at this point. We're hoping that government will take an interest in funding such projects as well as mainstream projects. We're hoping to see National Public Radio get more involved in local news gathering. They do a great job nationally and globally, but there's very little that they do locally. We're interested to see universities step up to the plate as well, and they're doing it too. That journalism schools in particular, but we've seen it at environmental studies programs and at ed schools as well, are getting into the publication business, writing directly for the general public. So there are various ways. We need a mixed model of funding streams, and we need society to take a kind of common responsibility for providing news to the democratic public.
Now, you had said today that the bar of actually fulfilling the kind of journalism has been done is fairly low because the quality of journalism, I'm thinking you're saying that, wasn't that great to begin with. Is that true, or did I get that a little wrong?
I did say that. I think that as a historian of American journalism, I don't think American journalism was of the sort we're talking about today. Verified, close, critical look at major institutions of power in society, a thoughtful look at the society in its breadth beyond government. Journalism didn't do very much of that in the 18th and 19th century. Even into the 1950s, I think there was a big change that journalism expanded its purchase in the 1960s and 1970s. I think that has left an important legacy. We've come to rely on better journalism than we ever had before. And I think there's a kind of unfortunate nostalgia that it must have been good in the past. Things were always better in the past, it seems. But in this case, I don't think it's true, unless you're talking about the very recent past in the case of American journalism. The best of our journalism from 1970 or so on has been terrific. I can hardly get through a day without the New York Times. But on the whole, it hasn't been that great, and I think there's a lot of work to be done.
You said you can hardly get through a day without the New York Times. What happens if that day comes that the New York Times disappears? It would have been unthinkable just 3 or 4 years ago. It's not so unthinkable now.
That's right. It is not unthinkable. My best guess, but it's not 100%. I'm not sure I would stake my life on it. Is that the New York Times is going to be around, for the next 50 or 100 years or beyond. But in what form, I don't know. I'd like it in my hand, print. I think that has some real advantages. But there's no doubt that they're putting more and more effort into their website, which is quite terrific. And you can get some things from it and do things with it that you can't with the print paper. But it's true that the economics of news at the moment, the loss of advertising is severe, and no one exactly knows how the news industry is going to get through it.
Okay, so one more final question. Will there be sufficient information in the public square to allow people to make well thought out choices in public life?
I'm convinced there will. In two respects. On the one hand, it wasn't so high in the past. We can do better than that. In part, we simply have a lot more information that you can pick up, or I can pick up if we're really interested, by going online. Campaign finance contributions, zero information before 1974. Now it's online, it's readily available. This is through federal action, through the campaign finance laws. Information about foreign lobbyists contacting the Congress. You can get that information online. That information wasn't available even 5 years ago. It was put together through the work of private organizations and journalistic organizations, ProPublica in this case. So there are enormous advances in the information available to us from government, from NGOs, from databases being assembled. I think absolutely that information is going to be available. Is it going to be translated into the kind of readily available front page news stories that we've learned to rely on? That's a matter where that relies on journalistic human power, and that relies on whether we can finance journalism.
Okay, so you sound to be an optimist.
I am an optimist. You talk to people at these small online startups, as Len Downey and I did. The optimism is absolutely infectious. Even journalists who've left or been fired from or been let go from traditional mainstream organizations now are working at lower wages for some of these organizations, and they are grinning ear to ear. They've never had such a good time.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time.